comments or questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you in the order received. We're going to move on to our first item. It's a presentation. Our first item on the agenda will be an update on the status of safety and security on NCTD's modes and facilities. Karen Tolsky, Tucholsky, thank you, Chief Operations Officer, Operations Service Support Services, and Karen Harris, Chief of Safety and Risk Management. These are all incredibly important positions. So thank you for being here and providing us with this. We'll introduce this item. You have our attention, and I'm also loving the costume. It's fabulous.
Thank you. And thank you for having us. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share information about our respective programs. Also joining us is Chris Correa. She is our manager of security, aka Luke Skywalker. So she will also be able to assist with detailed questions on the security program itself. So you can see we have a fairly robust agenda here. We've got some items we're going to cover on the security program and then turning it over to Karen, aka K2, for safety and risk management. So we're just going to dive in, Suhail. Thank you. So just a brief background on our security model. Chris is the manager of the security department. We also have an assistant manager. We have 9 control center technicians, and we have 6 code compliance inspectors. And we'll talk a little more about what each of those positions do. And of course, you're also aware that we do have an MOU with the county sheriff's department for our transit enforcement security unit, aka the TSU team. Got to shorten some of these long names out. So starting off with a little bit about our monitoring center activities, our control center technicians are staffing the monitoring center, which is at Oceanside Transit Center, on a 24/7, 365 basis. So their primary duties are monitoring the closed circuit TV system, conducting virtual patrols throughout the many cameras that are along the right of way, transit centers, and at various buildings, office buildings, operations and maintenance facilities, etc. They are also key in assisting with incident support documentation. They are the front lines for our first responder calls during any sort of incident where we need to reach out to police, fire, anything like that. They are also key in a lot of the video review requests, so they can pull the camera views if we need to go back and do some research and see what was happening at a particular station, or we can assist with the downloads off of the vehicles themselves if we're looking to pull video from a bus or a train regarding an alleged security incident. They are also instrumental in helping making sure that the data is going into Vector Solutions, which is our company-wide database for safety and security incidents. It's really important, the work that they do in supporting faster response from law enforcement and helping to identify the chronic and repeat offenders that are within the system. We've recently partnered with the city of Oceanside. We have an agreement with them where we kind of share responsibility for the parking garage, and our specific responsibility is for those video patrols and that security aspect of it. So what we're actually doing in partnership with them is adding several new cameras and PA speakers throughout the parking garage. There's a lot of activity that goes on in there. You have cars kind of racing around, doing things they shouldn't be doing. You know, it's dark in a lot of the places. So you have folks that are, gathering to, probably conduct some activities they shouldn't be conducting. So having those additional cameras along with the PA speakers where we can make overhead announcements to individuals is really going to be instrumental in helping us maintain better safety and security in that garage. So we are purchasing the equipment, and the city of Oceanside will be doing the installation for us. And as you can see here, we currently have 450 cameras throughout the system. The addition of the Oceanside ones will be about 30 more cameras. So the code compliance program is something that was similar to the code enforcement program that we used to have several years ago. And these folks are out in the field. They are the ones that are going out into the field trying to help with ordinance compliance. We don't have them doing the hardcore law enforcement things. We don't want them getting into any dangerous situations. So their tasks are primarily things like parking enforcement, loitering, fare evasion, riding on board the modes of service, that level of compliance, but they are absolutely instrumental. We got our first hire, I want to say almost a year ago. I think Bobby started in December of last year. We have 2 vacancies currently, staff 4 out of the 6. And having them out in the field is just absolutely tremendously helpful. They're able to go out and respond to things that are happening out in the field, to assist with, again, minor activities that are coming in from reports, maybe from a train or on a bus or at a station, and help us have a quicker response. But again, that visibility out in the field that they provide is absolutely essential to, again, helping us really maximize our proactive security posture. And of course, this is a customer service friendly approach. We're not here to, draw a hard line and try to throw people off the system. We're here to educate, ask for compliance, and just really try to have that firm but friendly approach to dealing with folks to make sure that people who need to use our system and access it are doing so in a proper manner and providing a good environment for everyone. So we have 7 days a week coverage. You can see here we're not fully staffed, of course, 24/7. We don't have that many employees yet, but it's definitely making a difference, and we're definitely hitting the key hours that we have the most folks out there on the system. The other thing that's important about the CCIs is that in late 2020, the board approved us to stand up our own administrative citation program, which will enable us to handle citations and process them through a third-party company rather than having to send everything through the courts. Again, we're not trying to criminalize behavior like fare evasion and loitering and, parking, inappropriate parking. But we do want to make sure that we have the ability to issue some citations if we need to, and then processing it through that administrative piece provides, I think, a better outcome overall, gives us a bit better visibility into things that are going on. And also, again, protects individuals from being, turned into, perceived as criminals for things that really are not criminal offenses. So once we get our folks trained up, we'll definitely be able to start standing up that program and going ahead to move that forward as a next step. So moving on to our TSU services. So the current MOU is in effect, started back in July of 2022, and it's 5 years through June of 2027. So our deputies provide response throughout the entire service area. They primarily are out there along the right of way. They're handling trespassers along the right of way, encampments, trying to make sure that we're moving people off the right of way so that we don't have a safety incident that then, turns into something for Karen and her team that they would have to work with. They're the lead agency for rail incident response investigation. So any incident that happens on our train, on our tracks, they are the ones that are handling those issues. They will also respond to any significant disruptive passenger issues on the vehicles as they're able to as well. Again, we're trying to de-escalate, not get folks arrested or anything like that. We're just trying to de-escalate. They're also key in helping us staff a lot of the special event trains. The Padres games, we kind of get some folks who get a little carried away with their good time going to and from the games and can get a little boisterous. So for some of the more popular games, like Dodgers are in town, we're definitely always going to have the deputies on those trains just to make sure that we're keeping it a family-friendly environment for everybody. And then they will also do special details and patrols. They've done right-of-way trespassing patrols. They've done them at Vista Transit Center, Oceanside, Escondido. So anywhere that we have kind of a uptick in activity, we can send them out and have them do some special details to help address those issues. Next slide. I just want to show a little bit of these 2 new facilities. So this last year, we've actually stood up a facility at Vista Transit Center, opened at the beginning of the year. And this is kind of the hub and the drop-in point for where our deputies all start their day now. They used to start over at San Luis Rey Transit Center in that building because they need somewhere to do their briefings and, go through all their confidential information. But we opened up this spot at Vista largely because the detailed patrols that they were doing were really indicating that unfortunately we had some ongoing significant issues. And so they felt that having this drop-in center where folks know that, they're going to be coming in and out all day would actually be more effective than trying to do, these targeted details. And it's actually working very well. So definitely we're seeing an improvement over there, and we're very pleased about that. Also opened up a drop-in facility at Buena Creek Sprinter Station that opened in March. And again, this is another place along the Sprinter line that's kind of central to some different activities that go on that we want to keep off of our rail lines. So this is another great facility that we were able to open up to help support that law enforcement presence throughout the system. All right, so turning to a little bit of our statistics. The bottom line is from 2023 and the top line is 2024, what we have year to date. This is about our law enforcement activity and contacts. As you can see, we are definitely increasing activity and contacts year over year. The arrests have increased year over year as well. I think there's a few reasons that account for that. Number one, we did start significantly increasing patrols at some of the stations where we were having issues. And when you do that, you tend to contact more people and you tend to find more individuals who you may need to arrest. They may have outstanding warrants or other issues. So, those numbers are going up. But with that happening, it also means that, the safety and the security is going up as well. And as you can see, it's already starting to drop off a little. So what usually will happen is that the folks who do not want to be contacted by law enforcement will see that we have stepped up our presence, and then they kind of start taking their business elsewhere. So you'll see that ramp up where they're really leaning into it to make a difference. And then you can see what is supposed to happen. You want that to start going down, either because the individuals have been moved off the system by our deputies or they're self-moving off the system. Next slide. So loitering and vagrancy, you can also kind of see the same trend here. It's increased year over year, but it's also starting to decrease. The majority of the increase is seen at Oceanside Transit Center due to a couple of things. We did have, as you I know are aware, the city of San Diego kind of stepping up their posture against individuals who are unhoused and pushing them northward. We had a lot of individuals who were ending up on our system, and particularly at Oceanside Transit Center. It's the largest center, has all the modes of service, has, restrooms and overhangs and all sorts of other things that individuals, are looking for. So we stepped up our enforcement, and you can kind of see again, the numbers go up, but then they are starting to go down. So again, definitely the trend that we want to see, but hands down, definitely more loitering year over year. And a big component is that shift that we've been seeing from the city. So one of the other important things that we're very excited about is the outreach activities that our TSU team has been doing in partnership with the County Department of Health and Human Services. This started about a year and a half ago. Supervisor Desmond was instrumental in helping get this program set up for us. And the program started out with an outreach and support specialist riding along with the deputies 1 to 2 times a week, and they would go out mainly along the right of way and contact individuals and offer them, supportive services and assistance to try to help them, improve their living situation and get the resources that they need. Recently, they have added a social worker to the program. And that's instrumental because as I understand how the system is set up, the outreach counselors are only able to offer assistance like food and medical prescriptions, those types of things. In order to actually refer someone over for housing, you have to be a licensed social worker. So having that licensed social worker added to our team really helps put that whole picture together, kind of enables us to offer that whole pie to them instead of just a slice of the pie. We can now offer, housing support to those who need it, as well as other resources such as medical resources, food, those types of things. So we're very excited about that. Next slide. Just wanted to show a couple examples of the success that our team has had. On the left over here, you can see a couple of our deputies getting a great thumbs up from a woman they were able to help. She and her boyfriend had actually been living pretty much at the Escondido Transit Center, and he was abusing and battering her. He got taken away and arrested, and they actually were able to get tickets for her back to Hawaii to her family, who was very excited she's able to be coming back to them, and they're now able and are helping her get herself stood back up. So this was their kind of departure picture at the airport as they were sending her off. And they still keep in touch with her. One of the nice things about our deputies is that they maintain kind of ongoing relations with these individuals that we're serving. And because of their positive demeanor, the individuals who they come in contact with are very responsive to the direction that we're giving them. They're not combative. They really do respect our deputies and our team. One of the other things we also did, and again, working with HHS and the County Humane Society, was to hold some clinics for individuals experiencing homelessness for their animal companions. I'm an animal lover here, so I just love all these pictures of the folks coming in to bring their little pups and kitties in for assistance. And again, just another way of showing that we really are trying to help individuals to, do the best that they can for themselves and to offer them, options for supportive assistance. Next slide. So this is just a summary of the fiscal 2023 TSU outreach activities that were conducted with the HHS department. As you can see, we contacted almost 350 individuals. 75% of those did accept some form of assistance offered. We had 25% who declined any, but I think that 75% rate of people at least accepting something, varying forms of assistance, is really positive, and very excited to continue to work on this program and watch it continue to expand. Next slide. Some of the additional outreach and support that we are doing is ongoing partnership with the local law enforcement homeless outreach teams. We also continue to distribute resource contact cards to individuals. They're kind of half size, 8.5 by 11 sheets, kind of half size of that, with all sorts of resources and contact information printed on them that we can hand out to individuals so that they can have that information handy if they want to avail themselves of those resources later on, if they're not maybe accepting resources or assistance from us in the moment. We're also in the process of finishing up our threat and vulnerability assessment, which is a project that we engage a contractor for every 3 years to go throughout the system, do that assessment of threats and vulnerabilities, and recommend things that we can do to mediate those. And we did specifically ask them to put in a task addressed to addressing homelessness on the system and providing some positive suggestions for us. So we should have that report by the end of this year. And of course, we look forward to sharing it with this committee or the full board next year. One of the other things we want to call out is the Vista Transit Center Resource Fair that was conducted back in August. This was hosted at Vista Transit Center by the county and the city. And this was a big event. You can see we had lots of different vendors and providers that were there doing outreach to those experiencing homelessness. They had showers, legal aid, healthcare, and other services. We were there providing a booth about transit information, and the district attorney's office is providing counseling and legal services, and reached over 130 individuals. So really great event. And I know we will definitely, consider doing more of those if there's an interest in doing those further with NCTD. On-call security services, something new that we also started this past year. So we have a short-term security services agreement currently with a company called Off Duty Officers that's effective through the end of this fiscal year. It's an interim measure while we're in the process of putting a multi-year on-call security services agreement in place. The RFP was actually posted. It closed in October. We had 6 responses, and our source selection committee is currently going through that selection and evaluation process. We're hopeful that we will be providing recommendation to the full board in December for mobilization by January, so that we can stand up those services and utilize them throughout the system on an on-call basis as needed. So currently, just a little picture of what our interim services agreement is covering. ODO, off-duty officers, is staffed 7 days a week. We have them at OTC overnights, and then at ETC, we have them in kind of the afternoon, evening, early into nighttime period. They also help staff a lot of Padres trains as well, where we wouldn't want to necessarily call the deputies out, but do want to have a presence. And you'll see them out here. You'll see them at other board and committee meetings. We're really trying to use them places where we need a security presence, but don't necessarily want to take our TSU officers, off the street, as it were. We really need them out in the stations and along the right of way. One of the other partnerships that we had was with the City of Oceanside and the Gatekeepers firm. Gatekeepers and the TSU team worked diligently at Oceanside Transit Center. For those of you who know the wall, You can kind of see some before and after pictures. Some of the before pictures, they're so crowded you can't even see the wall. And these are some after pictures where again, reaching out, making sure individuals are being offered services, but we're clearly told that they cannot be loitering and gathering at these particular locations, interfering with the folks who are coming here for our transit services. And then we're getting to the end, I think, of my section here. I just want to talk a little bit about the general security and law enforcement partnerships that we have. Myself, Chris, and her assistant Todd have started quarterly meetings with ourselves and the assistant city manager in Oceanside to collaborate on problem areas at and around OTC. And that's been really great. And then we're also starting meetings with EPD, Escondido, Oceanside, and Carlsbad police departments directly, along with our TSU teams. We're starting quarterly meetings with those groups in November, which I guess is actually coming up very quickly here tomorrow. We'll be starting our meetings next month. So excited for that continued collaboration with our local law enforcement partners, again, to address the issues in our respective transit centers and city locations. I think that's it for me. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Harris.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So my team and I put together just a few slides of high level data for us to discuss today. So the first slide is describing the accidents and with injuries that have occurred on at the district, both at facilities and on modes. You can see we did calendar year 2021-22, and so far for 2023, the coaster sprinter accidents, those also include accidents with individuals on the right-of-way, trespassing on the right-of-way, including fatalities. And then the breeze accidents, all of these, by the way, are accidents that either resulted in a fatality, and by the way, those were only for the coaster and sprinter trespasser incidents. But the others included medical transportation. That's how we defined the accidents with injuries. So if it resulted in medical transport, that's what these numbers represent. Slip and falls, medical, again, those are across modes. They include platforms, a lot of falls getting on or off the buses or while riding the bus, but that weren't necessarily associated with an accident, like a vehicle accident. Next slide. This is a new slide that, since now safety is safety and risk management, I thought it'd be important to include the information about government claims that we receive for these sorts of incidents. So you can see in 2021, we received 17 government claims. In 2022, we received 33. And for this year so far, we received 29. These can be for anything: bodily injury, personal injury, for property damage, civil rights claims, all of them. Most of our claims that we have received are associated with bus operations and are tendered to MV Transportation to handle those claims and pay for them if they are adjudicated as being liable for them. So that's significant. Most of them go to them, and we have in terms of frequency, that's definitely where those are at. And next slide. We prepared a few slides about trespassers on the San Diego subdivision. You can see that for 2023, the reports of trespassers are down relative to 2022. You can see that for this year, there was an increase during the summer months, and we've definitely seen more activity during the summer months. A lot of the two main areas that we see the trespassers, the top two for sure for the San Diego subdivision, is the Del Mar Bluffs, and activities related to mitigations are kind of being limited right there because of litigation in that area. The other area is the YMCA Trestle Bridge, and we're happy to report that as of the most recent absolute work window weekend, we were able to install a deterrent fence on the side that the trespassers usually jump off of that bridge. So we're looking forward to seeing those numbers really go down, hopefully, after that installation. Next slide. So the San Diego subdivision near miss training, again, a near miss is when the operator of the train has to take some braking measures to try and avoid hitting a trespasser. So you can see the near misses are also down from 2022, and they continue to trend downward. Now, this data is only really as good as our reporting. So we're always constantly trying to train and retrain and remind operators that they need to call in the, excuse me, that was for the trespassers. The near miss we do know about when they apply the brake. So we're happy to see that this is going down. Next slide. Trespassers on the Escondido subdivision. The Escondido subdivision trespassers really are about a third of what's going on in the San Diego subdivision. So it's definitely not as big of a problem. But there definitely are still a lot of reports. So in 2023, you can see that the reports are trending slightly downward compared to, excuse me, there's a mistake on that slide, I think, compared to 2022. But yeah, you can see that the trends are, it is slightly going upward. If we can go to the next slide, please. So Escondido subdivision near miss training, again, where a brake was applied to avoid striking an individual on the right of way. There are fewer near misses in 2023 compared to last year, but you can see that that trend is going up a little bit there. Next slide. So one of the things we've been doing to try and address the issues of trespassers on the right of way who are intending to, take their own lives. We recently procured new signs back in July, I think, of 2022. The National Suicide Prevention Line was moved to a 3-digit number, 988, rather than a 10-digit number, to make it a lot easier for folks to get the help they need when they're contemplating jumping in front of a train. And the FTA, I think it was December of 2022, put out a safety advisory encouraging rail transit agencies to adopt this new 3-digit number and procure signs with the new number on it. So we have already procured these signs. We intended to have them, and we did already identify all the spots where they need to be put in. We're replacing signs that were there before, and some of them are new areas where we're adding signs. We intended to get them the installation to start this month, but the signs were a little bit sharp on the edges, so they needed to be kind of sanded and rounded down. So we expect all these to be installed both on the San Diego and on the Escondido subdivision by the end of the year. And I think that's all. We'll take any questions if you have them now.
Thank you so much for the presentation and information. Suheil, do we have any public comments on this agenda item?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, so at this time, we are ending public registration to speak on this item. Are there any questions or comments from the committee members?
Thank you. That was a really comprehensive presentation. There's a lot of information to take in there, but there's some really high points, I think. I'm very pleased about the partnerships that we have between the county's social workers and with our sheriff's officers. I think that that's a real bright spot, and I hope we can continue that and learn from what more we could be doing there. Just on that topic of housing, that's such a key thing that you mentioned, that it has to be a licensed social worker that can make those referrals for that person to be able to get into housing. And I know as cities, it's our responsibility to get folks housed. But how do you see NCTD being able to support that? Or will we be getting information as city representatives for how we can continue to support those efforts?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. Probably haven't thought it thought it out that far yet. But I think what we definitely can do is take that back to Sergeant King, who is in charge of our TSU unit, and ask him to speak with his contacts at HHS. I feel like a lot of them are already working with your cities. So I think that that is an excellent point, that there is that opportunity for information sharing and collaboration, so that if we're finding a lot, as example, a lot of encampments in a particular city, maybe we can make sure that our HHS folks are contacting and working with the HHS folks who are working within your city, and really build out that responsive resource team. So that's definitely something that we can take away from today, back to Sergeant King and his team, to see if we can, build that collegiality and collaboration, so that we can have a stronger presence and more ability to be responsive to these individuals.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful information for us, especially because there's a little bit of shuffling around between all of our cities, and the answer isn't just moving somebody to another
No,
city,
it's
it's
not.
getting them back into housing.
Yes.
So that communication, collaboration, I think is really important to me and to my colleagues as well, to know what exactly can we do. I had a question about the threat and vulnerability assessment. So I assume that when that study is done a year from now, that it will come back with recommendations. Often when we undergo that type of study in our city, we get the set of recommendations, and then we could be eligible for funding. So is that the goal here? And what kind of vulnerability or threats are we preparing to learn about?
Yeah. Excellent questions. Thank you. So the threat and vulnerability assessment is focused on physical assets. So they go out and they do a review of all the transit centers. They will go on board our vehicles and look at our vehicles, and they'll go out to not all 1,800 bus stops, but a select group of bus stops out and about in the service area. And they're looking for basically physical threats for crime and vandalism and those types of activities that could be occurring on or within the system that, of course, are safety and a security concern. So the draft report that we received, and it'll be due at the end of this year, it's due in December of this year, right around the corner, has a range of recommendations. So in some cases, for example, they have recommendations for improving like their bollards. Like someone could drive right through and crash into something up on the platform and cause an accident because the parking lot is, right there and there's nothing to separate it. So they'll put some bollards up here, or they'll recommend putting cameras around at other places so that the security team in the monitoring center has more visibility into areas out at the parking lots and out at the transit centers, so that their virtual patrols are more robust. So it's a mix of things, but it's all physical based. We did also include in the scope of work a requirement for them to recommend to us funding sources such as grants and other places that we could get funding based on these other recommendations that they are making to us. We should go back and take a look at the recommendations that you're going to make to us, and then please go out and do some research and make recommendations to us on, places that we could reach out to for external funding opportunities to help us supplement and be able to put forward, these recommendations as we so deem.
Thank you very much. Just two final comments. One, the suicide prevention signage, is that going to replace the signage that we already have in some of our cities, or is it going to be added?
It's going to replace.
Okay.
If it was a national suicide line sign, then yes, it will replace it.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then we had a public comment at our city council meeting last week about litter in the NCTD parking lot in the Encinitas Transit Station. And I guess that person made a request to NCTD to come clean it up, and they did. And so it was a really positive thing, because they couldn't complain that there was still trash by the time they came to that meeting. So whatever we're doing to be responsive to those kind of complaints is working well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. One of the things that just really blew me away was the amount of positive responses to your contacts, to the trespassers, and likely a lot of them unhoused population that are there. My experience in doing plenty of ride-along, not only with law enforcement, but with nonprofit organizations that specialize in this, the response is negative. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And for you to have such an incredibly high positive response, congratulations. Take that training, teach us how to do it because we need that. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. There's a couple of things that I also want to bring up. I've used quite a bit the Sprinter, Escondido to Oceanside, back and forth, the buses, Padres games, all kinds of stuff. And usually when I come back late, one of my concerns over the years have been a lack of lighting in Escondido. And I'm now beginning to hear that from mostly my senior residents community that use public transportation. And it's almost, and unfortunately, and this I just saw last week again, the areas that are dark are areas with seating, and it begins to invite those to hang around and stay there. And I'm a pretty big guy. People tend not to come close to me unless they're going to ask me a question or something, but I didn't feel all that comfortable walking around and I was looking for a couple of ladies that were coming on the bus and said, oh, maybe I missed them. And I would have felt very uncomfortable that they would have been walking through that, specifically through those areas. So lighting is one thing that I'm concerned about. Changing topics to your resource fair that you had in Vista. Do you ever invite, and I don't know if we can, so this is a question, but to these resource fairs, do you ever invite the Mexican Consulate mobile unit to come and visit, also provide services?
I don't know that much about it. I'm going to turn around and look at Mr. Orlando and see if he may have a little bit more information on that. His team was really on the forefront of putting that event together.
So that was really short chair.
Yeah, I had one of those too.
I don't know what happened there. So that was the first time we had done it. So that was our first resource fair that we had hosted. And it was the county and the city of Vista organized it, and they recruited the vendors. I do not believe that the consulate was included, but we provided the space and provided our own booth. But all of the vendors and the folks that were there were coordinated through the county and the city of Vista.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a suggestion that I would make.
Okay.
Because it would be such an incredible help to our community. A lot of those that ride public transportation would probably likely benefit from having those. And I've always wondered, because they usually will contact me to see where we could host a site. And I've thought about the transit in Escondido, the transit center, because it's such a great place, central and easy to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So people are able to access that. So I wanted to ask about that. And the other one, the last point that I wanted to ask about was law enforcement presence. In Escondido, for years, I've taken my adult children to catch the bus, to pick it up, to ride downtown. I've taken it to come to work at different hours of the day. And I really don't see Padres games. We've been members for years, and I really don't see any law enforcement that much on that transportation. Mind you, I'm a chaplain with the police department, so I understand how busy they are and how many things. I've been a law enforcement chaplain for the last 20 years. So I understand, but nonetheless, I wonder about that. At least because presence is just something that's so important, because presence prevents a lot of things. You just, oh, they're here, right? So they'll step away. Here in Oceanside, I've spent hours in the parking lot here. I've left my vehicle overnight, and thank you very much. I came back and it was beautiful and it was great. And I've literally spent sitting in the parking lot hours, and I see the movement and I see the patrols come by. And I think Oceanside is although a high incidence that you have had in the past, I think you have it very well controlled. So congratulations on that. But I don't feel as comfortable leaving my car in Escondido. Okay. And I, once again, hear from my constituents quite a bit that they don't feel that safety there. So I wanted to bring that up. Because if there's an incident that requires law enforcement response immediately, of course, Escondido is going to respond. But Escondido is not working with NCTD regarding that. And I have spoken to the chief about that. I'm happy that you're going to begin to have quarterly meetings with them. And if there's anything that I could help expedite, I would be happy to do so. But there is disconnect. I don't know from what we see than what is being reported. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form insinuating that what they're reporting is not true, because that is not even on my radar. I'm saying is that we don't see them. Rarely do we see them.
Yeah, absolutely. That is, the things that you've mentioned, the lighting, the individuals who are gathering, in the areas where there's not a lot of lights, and the towers, providing a little bit of shelter. Those are all concerns that, we have about Escondido. I know Chris's team, deals with that on a daily basis. So those are definitely things that we're going to be looking at addressing with a threat and vulnerability assessment and getting their recommendations back. But that's also one of the reasons that we did just start having the on-call security patrols out there. We started that.
Sorry, beginning of this month.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
Are they visible, or are they kind of undercover type thing?
No, they're visible. They have the issue that I see is that we have a lot of security individuals who are not working with us, writing our system.
Yeah.
So they may at this present moment, early stage, get confused as just the regular patron writing our system. But yes, they have their security uniform, similar to the gentleman that's sitting out here that says security officer on the outside. So I've got great feedback. We have them staffed 6 days a week during those hours to ensure that, that gap between when the deputies perhaps are dealing with something else on the system, we have that there. In addition to them, I have the code compliance inspectors, 3 new that just started, will be frequently going to Escondido Transit Center when the deputies are not there. So to ensure that someone in some shape or form in security is going to be there during the busy times.
Great, thank you. And I don't know how training or who's supposed to be asking for tickets and things like that, but I have been on the Sprinter and approached by an employee asking for tickets, and I am of a group of those that we don't purchase tickets. We're able to ride, and I identified myself, and he had no idea. I don't know. And I said, well, you need to ask someone. And then he went and asked someone else, and he said, I don't know. And well, he's gonna know because he's been working for 20 years, and I don't know. And I said, well, if I misunderstood, then I'll go ahead and go purchase a ticket. So there's a disconnect between the training, or if it's somebody that is actually supposed to be asking for tickets. So wanted to go ahead and inform you of that.
Right, thank you. We will go ahead and follow up with our rail operations folks and make sure. Do you carry your little NCTD Prano card with you?
Now I do,
Okay.
now that I've received one,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, super. Because it's probably what they're looking for. So apologies if that interaction wasn't as it should have been, but we will definitely follow up with rail operations and make sure they understand what, the board and staff and Prano cards, and making sure they're approaching folks properly.
Okay, yeah, and as I understand, also law enforcement,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay,
law
and I
enforcement.
identify myself as part of law enforcement
Okay.
with my badge and ID.
Okay.
And that's where the
Okay,
answer
that's
to that
helpful to
is
know.
I have
That's
no
helpful to
idea
know.
what you're talking about.
All right.
And so like I said, I'll talk to somebody 20 years. And I said, okay. And then he came back and I said, I'll be happy to get off and buy a ticket. I said, that's not a problem. No, go ahead and I'll find out. And so
Yeah.
to me, that was a major disconnect somewhere.
Yes, and that's very helpful context, that exact, knowing exactly what that was. So thank you very much. We will address that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do have a few questions. So I'm curious about this partnership with the city of Oceanside for the camera and PA systems. Is the threat and vulnerability study, is that going to identify potential other partners for a partnership like this?
So the city of Oceanside, their parking garage is a little bit unique. We have an MOU with the city of Oceanside because they actually own that garage. So we have an MOU with them where we kind of share responsibility for that garage 50-50. We handle the security aspect of it, and then they handle like the facilities, the cleaning aspects of it, those types of things. So we started having a lot of issues in the garage from a security perspective, and their police realized this as well. And so we kind of come together and said, well, what can we do about this? And that's how we came to that collaboration. We said, hey, we can get the equipment. Since it's your facility, if you all can install it, it'll, be a lot more effective that way. And so that's how we came to that particular collaboration, just because we happen to have that MOU, which gives us that shared responsibility. As far as the threat and vulnerability assessment, I don't know that that it would make sense with other cities per se, because the property is our property. That property is not our property, but their goal is to provide us recommendations for any other options that we can use for funding. And if there are certainly partnerships with the cities where the cities would be interested in helping us, we're happy to explore that. I don't know that the folks who are doing the threat and vulnerability assessment would necessarily be diving that deep into that level of research.
Okay, yeah, because I'm just curious to see what kind of crime prevention through environmental design aspect would be coming out of the threat and vulnerability study. At the end of the day, I think that, we have a good foundation for our security, and we're looking at enhancing it, which is critical, especially as the Youth Opportunity Pass is going to continue, right? We want to ensure that NCTD is safe for all riders. So I am really curious to see what's going to come out of the threat and vulnerability study. And when is that anticipated again to be finished?
December of this year.
December.
We should
Okay.
get the final report. So we should be able to come to either this committee and or the full board within the first quarter or early second quarter of calendar 2024.
Okay, and
with
we
an overview.
anticipate that there will be some kind of recommendation list. Is it mostly going to be informational, or is it going to be actionable?
I don't think it's actionable per se. So the draft report that we received is broken down by the groups of facilities. So it has all the operations and maintenance facilities. It has the coaster transit stations, the sprinters transit stations. So it's broken down that way, and it goes through and it has the assessment, and then it has recommendations for each of the locations. And then then they have a summary report where they summarize consolidated recommendations. So just for a simple example, across all the different rail stations, say they recommend, this many cameras more at this one and this many more at this one. Then there's a summary recommendation where they say your whole system should add whatever, 200 or 300 more cameras. I'm just making up a number. So they have it detailed at those levels, and then they have the summary recommendation levels. So from there, it's incumbent on us to kind of go through and figure out, what priorities are. We have high priorities on things like cameras and lighting and those types of things, because get an immediate impact from them. And we have already put in a request for the next CIP that is in process for cameras and speakers and a couple of the other high priority items that we saw even in the draft report. So from a board perspective, I think the action would be coming more on capital improvement program requests and those types of things. But the threat and vulnerability assessment itself and the information that we would provide would be more as an informational item, and then just to take feedback from the board is my estimation.
Okay, let me just recount to you what I heard. I want to make sure that I understand. So we're going to be receiving this report assessment in December, and it will be mostly for the information. Either it's going to be presented at this committee or for the full board. And there will be no formal recommendations presented in that presentation to us, but behind the scenes, staff on NCTD will be looking for recommendations to then add to the CIP.
Yes, so we'll be adding items to the CIP. And then as the CIP is presented to the board for approval, that will be where the action is coming in, approving those items included as part of the overall CIP.
Okay, the only I like that, but I do see one issue is that I think that it should come to this board, this committee, because if there are certain recommendations that we want to make, I think it's important for us to be able to have the opportunity to make that recommendation. We may not have any recommendations, but this seems to be such an important study that I would hate to miss an opportunity for either this committee or the board to have a little bit of influence on what ends up going into the CIP process. Not to override what staff thinks is a priority, but I do, because I'm hearing lighting, I'm hearing cameras. That is all something that, you know, I myself have brought up, other committee members have brought up, other board members. So I just want to ensure that we don't lose any kind of, you know, we tend to be some of the experts in the cities itself, right? So Escondido, Encinitas, Vista, and then the rest of the board, right? For all of North County Transit District. And some of us are really familiar with some of the design flaws that we have in our environment at our transit centers and stations. So I would just say that I think it's important. Maybe I'm off base. I mean, maybe the committee members don't think it's important, but I find it to be very important for us to be able to review that document and provide some kind of input, and not just be 100% informational. Because by the time we get to CIP, if there's something that is not on there that we were hoping would be on there, I don't want it to be a hope and then a disappointment. I want to be able to provide direct recommendations that this is a huge priority, or you know what, this one's not such a priority and this is why, and then we can have that conversation, right? So I just want to make sure that we have the ability to do that.
Absolutely. We will make sure that we figure out a way to enable the committee and or the board to have some input on that rather than us just marching. So,
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. And then, you know,
and
when
we
it,
appreciate the input and the support. So
yes.
Madam Chair, that's a really good point, and we will bring this study to the committee for its review and input prior to starting the capital budget.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we have as much ability. And we only have so many public meetings, right? And this is the time that we get to have these discussions. And I think it's, you know, being able to empower the board to present some of our thoughts on it could be really helpful, if even to just make the point when it gets to the entire board that we need this funded on the CIP. And then when it comes to the CIP, it would be nice to have this kind of segmented on there, just easy to, you know, we like picture books. We get a lot of reading. And so when there is a CIP, I think it would be really important for these elements that are coming from the threat and vulnerability assessment to be, you know, highlighted in a particular way, just to make it easy to decipher, you know, what's coming from what, because there could potentially be a few additional CIP projects that we need to undertake as part of this assessment. So thank you. I appreciate that.
we will make sure that you has something representing those items in the CIP. I'll make sure she puts that, calls
Awesome.
it out.
Yeah. Either it's like just in red font or something, you know, to make it easy. I'm really excited about the code compliance program. So it seems like we have 2 vacancies. So we have 4 folks, and I'm seeing this is 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. So how are areas, obviously they can't be everywhere all at once. So how are areas prioritized?
Prioritize based on our data, where we're seeing the most issues, particularly chronics, repeat offenders. We know Escondido, like I said, is a high priority for us at this present moment. Oceanside, and just really along the San Diego subdivision, Escondido on the actual Sprinter trains. Actually got them at our problem bus stops as well, addressing those within the cities as we get customer reports or reports from operators themselves. So it's really just kind of at this present, because I have a very limited staff, trying to figure out where our issues are and then sending them to go take care of those issues.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'm, you know, just thinking about how broad geographically NCTD is. Our jurisdiction is rather large, and I am concerned that, even if we were at full capacity of 6, that still doesn't seem to be enough. So, that's, I would like to really keep my finger on the pulse of this, because there could be a case made that we could increase the capacity, for our code compliance program. And what is the overall cost per full-time employee, for this position on an annual basis?
You mean fully burdened?
Yeah. Give me the highest number.
So call it 85 to 100,000 fully burdened.
Okay. And we have right now with the sheriff's department, how many officers? 10? Can't
We are
remember how many it
staffed,
was.
well, the head count is 10. We have 8 or 9.
7 with an 8 starting this month.
Okay. And what is the cost per deputy on an annual
Wow,
basis?
that's not necessarily the easiest calculation. I have to go back and look there. We get charged based on individuals and rank and those types of things. So a couple 100,000.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying because at the city level,
Average.
we're almost like 300, annually per deputy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and the reason that I bring this comparison up is that we definitely need more presence, like it was stated by committee member Garcia. But we also, have limited resources. So, in looking at the code compliance program, I really appreciate that NCTD has created this position, and it is a significantly less. Yeah, I mean, we get more bang for our buck, I think, and we need to have different levels of enforcement. I 100% understand that, a sheriff, a deputy, is going to have a different type of presence than code compliance. However, the presence needs to be there, and we could essentially increase our code compliance program and be able to have a larger presence and maintain, where we're at with our sheriffs. And I think it would greatly enhance the system, because the security issue is something that we hear over and over from our constituents, and even in personal experience in writing, I have had, a little bit of, at night and at the Escondido Transit Center, which I know we're talking about, the redesign and whatnot. So hopefully in the future, some of these can be addressed in a different way. But it is extremely dark, and it doesn't feel safe to be waiting for sometimes a very long time for the bus to come, right? Yeah. If you miss the Sprinter, you got to wait for that next bus, and it's a long time, and I've been stuck there at night, and a little bit of light would go a long way, right? So our code compliance program, stopping at 5 p.m., but it looks like we're going to have the off-duty officer program, that it's going to be able to address some of that gap. But I really do appreciate looking at these issues and seeing what we can do with the limited resources financially that we have. But I do encourage more of it. And it's a way for us to be fiscally responsible, but also address the public safety concern. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think that, as we get more information, there could be a case made that we want to increase our code compliance program. And I'm excited to see what kind of data comes out of the off-duty officer program as well. I did want to highlight the Vista Transit Center resource fair. This is something I have been, very vocal on NCTD, that we have these parking lots where a lot of folks connect to our system, but the parking lots could potentially be utilized for a lot more community engagement. And the resource fair was incredible. I was able to go and check it out. A lot of people were there. Great comment about having the Mexican consulate in as a mobile unit. I highly echo that, as the more resources, the better. But I got to interact with some folks, and it was a huge benefit. for them. And then even folks that didn't necessarily need those resources, they had something to do while they were waiting for their next, sprinter or bus, and just very curious about what was going on. But it was very well received by the community. And I would say, definitely let's see what we can do to have more of these resource fairs, especially to help folks that are having challenging times. And then also a resource fair in the sense that we can also highlight what we're doing in our system, right? So I don't know if that is appropriate to have in the same type of resource fair or if it's something that needs to be a different event, but I think it would be great for folks to be able to, look at our zero emission buses or, look at careers at NCTD, that kind of stuff as community engagement in our parking lots, I think is great. So anyways, I wanted to highlight that. That was incredible. I'm also really pleased with the outcome of 75% through our TESU and HHS partnership of folks that are experiencing homelessness, taking advantage of the access to resources. So that's incredible. It's something, that I highlighted as part of this committee chair, that I wanted to see a lot more of that happening. And I know that we had a pilot program. So I'm just curious, what is the funding for this program right now? And how long, do we anticipate that we will have funding for it?
The county is paying for the social worker and those folks. And as far as I know, they're continuing it until further notice. They're
Okay.
very pleased with it as well. Yes, Supervisor Desmond has been just amazing in helping to continue to push that support for the county. And that's also how we were able to even expand and get the social worker.
Yeah, I know. That's the social worker is critical. I mean, that's something that I had a lot of questions about. Obviously board member Desmond is not able to make it today, but he sits on this committee as well. And we had, the last time we saw this report, I think we were at 23 or 25% of folks that were accepting services. So this is a enormous increase. And obviously it shows that having a social worker and being able to fill these positions and a whole team together of law enforcement with the social worker, and providing a different type of welcoming environment for folks who, just have a lot of trauma. It's traumatic to have to live and not have a home, right? And so we understand that our system is going to have folks that are extremely vulnerable using the system. So it's huge. And one of the questions that I've had in the past, and I still continue to have this question, is for the cities that do have social workers, what is the connection between what NCTD is doing through this funding from the county and communicating also with the city, whether it's Oceanside and their hot team or Vista and the social workers that we have working through Exodus contract. Do we have examples of where there is direct communication from TESU and HHS, this team at NCTD, with interfacing with the cities?
I don't have that information, but I'm happy to check with Sergeant King and get clarification back. to you on
I
that.
would
It's a great
love that.
question.
I would love that, because as our cities take, what is our responsibility for public safety and for trying to create more affordable housing and connect folks to resources, there may be more opportunities for us to increase that to beyond 75%, which, is, I think a few years ago that was unthinkable. But this is, I just am so astounded of the success of this program. And I want to ensure that nobody falls through the gaps. And if we can identify that, hey, you know what, we can even add another layer to this of success by communicating and working in concert with the cities that do have these other resources. I just want to make sure that we do everything we can to be able to overlay those different programs together.
Mayor,
Yes.
I want to Oh, it's on. Uh, Just a quick question, piggybacking on what you said. Are these social workers, or the, licensed, mental health professionals that are part of the team, are these PERT teams? Because I know that these are not.
No, they're not PERT. With Sergeant King, it's difficult with the county to provide PERT office or PERT clinicians.
Yeah.
There's a direct correlation because I used to be a PERT officer myself with Chula Vista. They're responding to calls that are higher priority. So right as of right now, it's just the social worker and the clinician from HHS to provide services only. But we did talk about moving somewhere in that direction with some type of position of some kind. But that's something that's been put on the table for right now for hopefully later discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that clarification.
That's a great comment and question. So I appreciate that. And the fact that we're thinking about, we do see folks that are experiencing a different challenge sometimes with their behavioral mental health. So being able to address that in real time on our system could really bring a lot of benefits. And the last question I have is, when it comes to these quarterly meetings between NCTD, TESU, and the various police departments, do we receive any kind of information as far as minutes or summary of what was discussed? And if we don't, then can we receive that?
We're just starting. Our first meetings will be in November. So you have not missed any minutes. And we will be happy to provide some notes and share them out. We'll
Perfect.
come up with something, post-meeting
Awesome.
report or something. Yes.
Sounds good. I think that it's important for us to get that type of information because, there might be something in our respective city that we see highlighted on there and we're like, hey, we got to take this back to our city and figure something out and work with NCTD to make the situation better. So, are there any other last comments? Yes, please.
Yeah, just on that thread, I started thinking about, I know the county has embraced the concept of Built for Zero, which means that we'll be embarking on a database of everybody within the county's jurisdiction who's experiencing homelessness. And the goal is to get to what's called a functional zero so that everybody has a home. Have we been briefed on those efforts and are we expecting to be able to play a role in that?
I have not.
No, that's the first I'm hearing of that.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, just more for us to take a look at, and if you could let us know if that's something that NCTD will be participating and and if so, what that looks like, and we'll see it in this briefing next time if we're able to join in on that. Okay, well, there is no vote required for this item. Believe it or not, it was just informational. So we're going to move on to our next and last item on our agenda. And thank you all so much again. We really appreciate everything you do for NCTD and for the general public. The next and last item on our agenda is an update on the Breeze Speed and Reliability Study. NCTD is working on identifying infrastructure and improvements that may enhance the efficiency and reliability of Breeze service. Katie Persons, Director of Service Planning, will introduce this item. Katie, you have the floor. I'm super excited for this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, the Breeze Speed and Reliability Study was a project that we kicked off in fall of 2021. The goal of the study was to identify and prioritize opportunities available to NCTD to improve the speed, the reliability, the travel time of 10 Breeze corridors through the implementation of transit supportive infrastructure, technology, or policies. We had some secondary goals to also optimize the performance and safety for all modes of travel, as well as help to do our part to achieve local and regional goals for complete streets, multimodal options, and climate action. So NCTD had pursued funding for this study through the Caltrans Transportation Planning Grant Program. So the study was partially funded through an award from that program. Next slide, please. So the study included 10 core study routes along corridors with significant ridership or corridors that have been deemed as regional priority through the Regional Transportation Plan. The study included coordination with the county and each city within NCTD service area, and also included Caltrans and Sandag both as project sponsors and project stakeholders. Next slide. So this study is a bit more technical in nature than most other transit service planning studies might be, as it includes a variety of infrastructure, technology, and policy recommendations. So due to the nature of the study, the majority of the outreach so far has been with our jurisdictional partners. So that's engineers and planners at each city and county. Non-jurisdictional stakeholder outreach is also critical to the long-term success of the project. So we plan to conduct targeted webinars in late 2023 and early 2024 to help communicate that information to non-jurisdictional stakeholders. And later in the presentation, I'll discuss some of the elements that we're working on related to study communication and outreach. Next slide, please. So all in all, the study includes over 300 recommendations for improvement. These recommendations are focused on the speed and reliability problem areas that we have throughout the system and are sortable by corridor and jurisdiction. In some instances, there are layered recommendations. So for example, we'd have a recommendation for corridor-wide transit signal priority, as well as recommendations for individual intersections. And we'll talk about this a bit more, but that was really structured in a way to give us as much flexibility as possible when it comes to pursuing discretionary funding sources as we move into the next phase of the study. It also gives us flexibility when partnering with local jurisdictions who may have ongoing projects that are highly localized. And so we want those recommendations to fit within the local context as much as possible. Next slide. So instead of walking through all 300 plus recommendations, we have a high-level snapshot of what our project toolkit looks like. This toolkit accompanies the draft final report and includes specific information for each individual recommendation. On the left, we have the project name, the descriptions, study routes with direct benefits, as well as other breeze routes that operate along the same segment. We have the toolkit category, so the type of improvement being recommended, and then the time frame. And so we have time frame groupings of 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, and 11 plus years. On the right side, we have our evaluation matrix. We're going to dive into this piece more in the next set of slides, but what I'll highlight here for now is that we have the estimated benefits, impacts, and implementation feasibility for each individual recommendation within the study. And that provides us with really great planning level information that we can then utilize to pursue funding or partnerships for these projects. Next slide. So the project team went through an evaluation and prioritization effort utilizing the framework that's on the screen. The team applied a rating to 6 key categories along a scale of least favorable to most favorable, and the criteria were weighted with mobility benefits receiving the highest weighting. And so we'll go through each of these criterion categories in the next set of slides. So the first one is mobility benefits. That includes the estimated weekly time savings, estimated minutes saved per rider, and the average weekly riders benefiting from a specific recommendation or project. And so this information was based upon spring 2023 ridership data that we have for our breeze system. We also evaluated community benefits. So that includes the Title VI route designation for any projects along the corridors that are designated as a Title VI route. It also includes the USDOT Justice 40 community designation. And Justice 40 is a relatively new measure that the FTA uses in discretionary grant programs. So it was important for us to note that for each relevant recommendation. Next slide. We also evaluated planning level assessments of traffic and parking impacts as a result of any recommendation that we're making. So there were essentially a few categories that were screened for this criteria. That includes whether or not it has substantial operational impacts, whether a bus may be blocking general traffic movement in current operation or future operation, removal of general traffic lane, and removal of parking. So we evaluated recommendations based upon their ability to either reduce traffic and parking impacts, or if there are specific recommendations that may require removal of parking in order to implement. Next slide. We also evaluated 4 measures of local and regional consistency. That includes consistency with local plans and projects, regional planned rapid corridor designation, any planned grade separations included within the regional plan or other plans, and regional mobility hub or smart growth density area designation also within the regional plan. And then we also evaluated for cost. So we have a rough order of magnitude cost estimates for the recommendations, and that's based upon similar projects conducted in Southern California. And then we also have jurisdictional coordination as an evaluation criteria, and that essentially quantifies the number of jurisdictions that would be required for us to coordinate with to complete the project. So that might include CPUC, Coastal Commission, et cetera. Next slide. So to kind of wrap up that section, just wanted to emphasize that we have a lot of really great planning level information for each of the recommendations within the project, and that really helps us move into the next project phase. Right now, we're working on development of project communication tools that includes a set of 15 focus area fact sheets that summarize what the recommendations are, what those projects might look like, and what the benefits are to NCTD's riders and to the community at large. This will really help us in communicating with various jurisdictional partners, as well as potential funding partners to really communicate the benefits of those projects. We also are working on a public-facing map that will be available on our website, and we can share with partners as well. We have a series of internal web maps developed as part of the project analysis, and so we wanted to make sure we had a public-facing one for anyone who really wants to dig into the details of those recommendations. We are also moving into the next phase, which is pursuit of grant funding to further analyze some of the recommendations that are included within the study. And we'll include a specific example at the end of the presentation. And then we are also conducting additional planning at key transit centers. So a critical finding of the study was that we have choke points centered around specific transit centers. So many recommendations were aimed at alleviating the pressure at those choke points. Through our outreach, we identified 3 transit centers where either our jurisdictional partners or NCTD have active projects. And so we wanted to advance planning efforts for those areas in particular in order to be able to provide timely input and recommendations to our partners and to those projects. And we'll walk through those in the next couple of slides. Next slide. So OTC is a major hub for the district and particularly for our Breeze service. So as a follow-on task to this study, we're conducting additional planning analyses related to bus operations within the redevelopment project, as well as how NCTD's Breeze service will travel through or interact with the city's Coast Highway Streetscape project. So within this, we have consultant support for conducting additional concepts and analyses to help support our involvement and our input in those projects. Next slide. Vista Transit Center is another major hub for Breeze service, and one of the recommendations within the study included a proposed reconfiguration of bus bays at VTC to better correspond to the route's direction of travel away from the Sprinter corridor. So we're asking our consultant to work with us to develop up to 3 concepts to inform redevelopment of the station and help to better understand how bus operations and general traffic would interact with proposed redevelopment for that site. We also want to ensure that our analysis is synced with the recent award from the USDOT as it relates to VTC grade separation, as grade separation was included as a long-term recommendation within the study for Vista Transit Center. As part of our jurisdictional outreach, we discussed with the county their proposed project planning within the area of the Buena Creek Sprinter Station. We want to ensure that we are providing detailed information about the recommendations within the Breeze Speed and Reliability Study while the county is advancing design concepts so that we don't miss our window of opportunity to provide potential transit priority measures in the area. The study also includes Buena Creek grade separation as a long-term project. And to advance the next phase of planning for projects included in the Breeze Speed and Reliability Study, we plan to submit an application to the Caltrans Transportation Planning Grant Program for a concept of operations for corridor-wide transit signal priority along the Breeze 303 corridor. This planning effort would help to evaluate and define the various users' needs for implementing that system along the corridor. And so that would include very close coordination with the city of Vista and city of Oceanside, as well as Caltrans and other users of the system. And it would really just add a bit more detail to the TSP corridor concept, specifically for Breeze 303. And with that, it's time for questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And Sahil, do we have any comments for, I wasn't sure if you were there or not. I was like, oh, I'm going to say the wrong name, but you're back. Okay. Do we have any public comments for this item?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you. At this time, we are closing the opportunity for public comment. And are there any questions from the committee members?
Thank you. This is really exciting. Has the board been provided the complete list of the 300 recommendations yet?
Not yet. We wanted to conclude the stakeholder outreach before we come back to the board with the complete final draft and all the recommendations.
Okay. When do we expect that we would be seeing that?
Our second stakeholder webinar is planned for January 2024. So I'd imagine Q1 or early Q2 of 2024.
Okay. And will we get to see this project toolkit?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. That's a really cool visually way to see how everything ranked. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Pretty much one question regarding, I was checking to see it's about the Breeze Speed also. So my question is in regard to a number of riders have senior citizens have, I have a lot of senior citizens in my district, right? And one of the questions that they've raised is that they're told as they board that they need to put away their walker. And they're like, well, it takes me a long time to do it. And then I'm trying to maneuver with it and I feel so unsafe and it's going to affect time. And so I would like an explanation. Why is it that there's a policy like that? And if this is not the place and we need to do it later, that's fine. But I'd like to be able to explain why. And if there's a way that we can discuss this further, because it's definitely an issue for those that use walkers. I told them there has to be a reason why. It's not just because.
Yeah.
But it's pretty unsafe to have somebody who's medically have to have a walker and then they say, oh, now get rid of it and walk.
Yeah, the study as it stands today doesn't have a recommendation for policies like those, but I think that conversation would be good to have with customer service folks. And I think we could bring that to the next committee meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for all the questions and comments. And just a question. So this study is in its draft form, but we have not seen it yet, except for just this information, right?
Just interim reports at this time.
And we don't anticipate that we will see it until it is in its final iteration.
Draft final, yes.
Draft final. Okay. But not rough draft. The reason that I ask is I know it's really annoying and I want to like always just look at everything. But I think the more time that board members have, I mean, we have so many other meetings and everything, the more time that we have to look at the information, the more input we can have so that by the time we get to a final draft form,
Mhm.
we can ensure that we've addressed maybe some even preliminary questions. So I understand the whole, waiting for the stakeholders and whatnot, but we are stakeholders too.
Mhm.
So, I actually would appreciate to just have the ability to see it now.
Yeah, I think the best way we can definitely coordinate getting you that information because it is a sizable report and the matrix as well. I would say when we're able to finalize the web map, we can coordinate sending a package to the board ahead of the meeting, so that you're able to kind of dive into it and provide feedback before the board sees the full package. But I can coordinate with Suhail and others on that.
And what would the time frame be for that option? Potentially time frame.
I would say the web map is under NCTD staff review. I would say definitely by the end of the year, we'd be able to send you that. It's just the final draft or draft final document needs to incorporate a summary of the stakeholder feedback that we've received. And we won't complete those webinars until January. So we could provide the matrix as well as the web map so that you could look into the projects. We just wouldn't have the narrative document available to show until we're able to summarize that.
Yeah.
feedback.
So I'm not even, as that comes online,
Mhm.
it would be fine to see. I would like to have as much information possible that is currently available just to be able to see that
Yeah.
even.
Mhm.
Because I know that I already drag out these meetings forever. So I'm sorry that you all are stuck on this committee with me. I know I make like a 1 hour meeting, like 6 hours. So, but I would really, really like to look at this information in a detailed form because as someone who rides the system a lot, if I don't see something that I think should be a recommendation, like a bus only lane portion on the 76 as it turns onto North Santa Fe, like I want to be able to say that right now and be like, hey, like, why isn't this in there? For what reasons? Who do I have to go talk to at Caltrans? Right. I think the more time that we have to just see it, digest it, and understanding that it is a working draft, it's not even to the final draft form. I think we're okay with that. So,
Okay.
it seems like you have a question. So I'm gonna, thank you. Yeah.
Just a moment. With the information that I just received, how do I apply for a new assignment?
You're staying here. I'm sorry. We need good advocates from your city of Escondido. I appreciate you being here. But yeah, no, I think it would be really helpful because I really want to see those 300 recommendations as they stand, even before the feedback gets here. So, and the last thing that I wanted to ask, it was stated, all modes of travel and climate action. So does this intersect at all with the SCAP process that we're going through, the sustainability climate action plan or sustainable climate action plan? I don't really have too much information on it, but I remember that Mr. Tucker did say that we were going to move in that direction of a SCAP. So I'm just curious to see if that's tied into the climate action portion of the study.
To the degree that we have basically information available to us for each recommendation to calculate like VMT mitigation and other measures like that. It's connected in that way. But at this moment in time, it's not directly connected in terms of like taking these 300 recommendations and putting it in the SCAP, but we can definitely coordinate those two studies better to ensure that there's consistency there.
Yes. Okay, perfect. I love that you're thinking about that because if they're, we have 0 bus only lanes in North County, 0 miles of bus only lanes. But there are some areas where that could make a big difference. And sometimes it's really difficult politically to muster the will of a majority of whatever city to be able to go in that direction. And I think the more information that we provide about how this improves travel for all modes of transportation is critical. So being able to align this study with what we're doing on our SCAP I also want to take more money from the federal and state government if they'll give it to us, right? So to be able to make these recommendations, potentially part of a ask for a grant, I want to make sure that we're connecting all those together as much as possible. Understanding that I know we have limited staff time and I'm very demanding sometimes. So thank you. I appreciate all the hard work. Are there any other last minute questions?
Karina, I always learn something from you. And so it's such a pleasure for me to spend our time here talking about these things because I learned so much and I don't ever want you to feel bad about making this a longer process than it would be otherwise. So, I actually didn't see where it said the climate action as one of the evaluation criteria. I'm looking at, the project toolkit page overview, and I don't see that as one of the criteria that we're using to evaluate.
Right. It's not a standalone evaluation criteria, but it was listed as a secondary goal. We can, let's see. Where we had the evaluation. Within the kind of mobility benefits category is where we have kind of that quantification of benefits as it relates to specifically transit riders. We can definitely build out that section to kind of create that stronger link to the climate secondary goal. But yeah, there is not a specific evaluation criteria that is solely related to climate as it
Yeah,
stands
I
today.
think that Karina raises a really good point, and if that is part of how we're legally required to mitigate these VMTs, so that might be the deciding factor between why we would choose one project over another, or do something that she's hoping to see, like a dedicated bus lane or removing parking, something like that. So
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful to have that broken out.
Okay.
Or at least if it was listed under the
Yeah.
mobility benefits. So
Okay.
we know that's what that category
Yeah.
speaks to.
That's great.
I think it's really important on this study to recognize that these 300 recommendations are not projects necessarily that NCTD would do. And this is where your point about getting board buy-in and awareness of the specific recommendations is really important, because ultimately the ability to do these projects is going to rely on localities and local jurisdictions, because we're talking about lane changes, intersection changes, those sorts of really city specific infrastructure items. And so ultimately those are going to come back to you in your cities to help us construct. So the study will give us the basis for why those recommendations are being made, but ultimately building them out is going to take collaboration with the city and others to actually have them done. So it's really important that, what you're talking about, board member Contreras, about building awareness around the recommendation is key, because we're going to need a lot of buy-in to actually get these projects done.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I just see it. I've in my own city, I'm trying to put roundabouts anywhere I can, especially where it's next to school. We're really trying to do safe routes to school, and it can be really difficult when there's a lot of education that has to be done, right? To even let someone know that a traffic roundabout is 78% safer than a intersection with a controlled light, right? So, and the fact that we just don't have a lot of priority for our transit, there's a reason for that, and it is a political reason. And I think the more information that we can get, we can overcome some of the politics and just move forward with progress, right? And so I want to be able to do that. And then I think about, if we, and I appreciate board member Hinsey asking about the criteria, because I actually didn't think to ask that deep. So thank you. And then it makes me think too, the county is doing this whole regional decarbonization framework. So some of these things, are a menu of options that our local jurisdictions can implement, not only to enhance that jurisdiction's climate action plan, but to enhance the overall connectivity of its residents to other important resources. So I just see a lot of connections of, all these things that are happening. And also, we have this timeline where we just have this unprecedented amount of funding that we can, if we're really competitive, we can get a lot more funding and really leverage the little bit of dollars that we have to bring huge infrastructure change to our community. So thank you. So this is also an informational only. And so there is no vote required. And that concludes our meeting. So the next, let's see here. Hold on. Got to move to my next page on my script. The next scheduled meetings are as follows. Executive Committee meeting, November 6th at 11:30 a.m. Regular board meeting, November 16th at 2 p.m. and special board meeting, November 28th at 10 a.m. That's a lot of meetings. We're doing a lot of good work here, and I appreciate everybody on staff and all my colleagues on the board. Thank you, and have a wonderful, spooky, but safe Halloween.